December 2001. A company based in Houston, Texas, files for bankruptcy. At the time, it's the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history. The company is Enron. And here's what makes it different from every other corporate failure. 3 weeks before the bankruptcy, the CEO was on television telling the world that the stock was a bargain. And the employees, the 4,500 people who worked there and had their retirement savings locked inside company stock, had no idea what was coming. That's not an accident. It's the story. Enron started as a natural gas pipeline company. Ken Lay founded it in Houston in 1985 after merging two smaller energy companies. Pipelines are boring. You move gas from one place to another. You charge a fee. You make money slowly. Ken Lay wanted something bigger, and in 1990 he hired the man who would give it to him. Jeff Skilling came from McKinsey, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world. He was brilliant, aggressive, and he had an idea. He told Ken Lay that Enron didn't have to be in the pipeline business. It could be in the trading business. Instead of owning and operating physical infrastructure, Enron could trade energy contracts the way Wall Street traded stocks. Buy and sell gas, electricity, bandwidth, anything with a price. Enron would become a market. Ken Lay said yes, and the transformation worked. Enron built trading desks. It hired hundreds of sharp, competitive people, MBA graduates who wanted to work somewhere that felt like Wall Street but wasn't. The company went from a slow-moving pipeline operator to the seventh largest company in America by revenue. Fortune magazine named it the most innovative company in America 6 years in a row. 1 through 6, every year from 1996 to 2001. Wall Street loved it. Analysts had buy ratings on it. The stock climbed to $70 a share. Market cap hit $68 billion at its peak in the year 2000. But the business model had a problem, and that problem was accounting. When you trade energy contracts, you have deals that pay out over years, sometimes decades. The question is, when do you record the revenue? Normally, companies record revenue when they actually receive the money. Enron got permission from regulators to use something called mark-to-market accounting. Under this model, you estimate the total future value of a long-term contract the day you sign it, and you record it as profit. Today, before a single dollar has arrived. Here's the thing. If your estimate is even slightly wrong, you have a problem. If the deal turns out to be worth less than you projected, you have to restate your earnings. And Enron was making projections that were, to put it charitably, optimistic. The numbers looked extraordinary on paper. In reality, a lot of those contracts were worth far less. But nobody outside the company could tell the difference because the accounting was extraordinarily complex, which is where Andrew Fastow comes in. Fastow was Enron's CFO, and he built a structure that would eventually be described as one of the most sophisticated financial frauds ever constructed. He created entities, hundreds of them, separate companies on paper, called special purpose entities, or SPEs. These entities existed for one reason: to move Enron's debts off Enron's balance sheet. A deal goes bad? Put the loss inside an SPE. A debt piles up? Transfer it to an SPE. Enron's books stay clean. The SPEs absorb the problem, and investors never see it. The SPEs had names like LJM, Raptors, Jedi. They were structured so that they appeared to be independent, but in practice, Enron was guaranteeing them with its own stock. If Enron's stock went down, the SPEs collapsed. And if the SPEs collapsed, the losses came back to Enron. The whole structure was a circular bet on the stock price staying high. Fastow personally profited from running these entities, tens of millions of dollars. Skilling knew, Lay knew, and the auditors, Arthur Andersen, one of the 5 largest accounting firms in the world, signed off on it every year, without raising a public flag. In March 2001, a reporter at Fortune magazine named Bethany McLean published an article with a simple question: is Enron overpriced? She'd looked at the financial statements and couldn't figure out how the company actually made money. The math didn't add up. Enron's response was to invite her to Houston, sit her down with senior executives, and try to explain it to her. It didn't work. She published the article anyway. Enron's stock barely moved. Wall Street wasn't ready to believe it. But McLean wasn't the only one asking questions. Short sellers were betting against the stock. And inside the company, a vice president named Sharon Watkins wrote a memo directly to Ken Lay, warning that the accounting was dangerous and that Enron could implode in a wave of accounting scandals. Lay passed it to lawyers. The lawyers said, "Nothing to see here." The memo was buried. Meanwhile, the executives were selling. Ken Lay sold more than $70 million in Enron stock in the months before the collapse. Jeff Skilling had resigned in August 2001. He said it was personal reasons, citing a desire to spend more time with his family, and he had sold tens of millions in shares before leaving. Other executives did the same. They knew what the stock was actually worth. The employees didn't. Enron had a rule. Most employees in the retirement plan couldn't sell their company stock during certain periods, a lockdown. So while executives cashed out, ordinary employees, administrative staff, engineers, accountants who had worked at Enron for 15 and 20 years, watched their retirement accounts fall to zero and couldn't do anything about it. One man who had worked there for 33 years saw his retirement savings drop from $1.3 million to less than $14,000. That's not a rounding error. That's a life. The collapse happened fast. In October 2001, Enron announced a third-quarter loss of $618 million. It also disclosed that it was reducing shareholder equity by $1.2 billion, much of it tied to those Fasto SPEs. Wall Street finally started asking questions. Credit agencies cut Enron's ratings, the stock fell, and because the SPE structure was tied to the stock price, the losses came flooding back onto the balance sheet. On December 2, 2001, Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. $68 billion. Gone. 4,500 jobs. Gone. $2 billion in employee retirement savings. Gone. The trials took years. Andrew Fasto pleaded guilty in 2004. He cooperated with prosecutors and served 6 years in prison. Jeff Skilling was convicted in 2006 on 19 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and insider trading. He was sentenced to 24 years, later reduced to 14 after a series of legal battles. He was released in 2019. Ken Lay was convicted in May 2006, also on fraud and conspiracy charges. He was scheduled to be sentenced in October. But in July 2006, he died of a heart attack at his vacation home in Aspen, Colorado. His conviction was vacated. Under American law, a person who dies before their appeals are exhausted is treated as if they were never convicted. Ken Lay, legally speaking, died innocent. The collateral damage went beyond Enron itself. Arthur Andersen, the auditing firm that had signed off on every one of those financial statements, was indicted for obstruction of justice for shredding documents after the investigation began. It was convicted, and even though the Supreme Court later overturned the conviction on a technicality, it didn't matter. Andersen had already ceased operations. 85,000 employees lost their jobs at a firm that had nothing to do with Enron's fraud beyond failing to catch it. That's what obstruction charges and a criminal conviction do to a professional services firm. Here's what I keep coming back to. This wasn't some shadowy offshore operation. Enron had offices in a glass tower in Houston. It was audited by one of the most respected firms in the world. It was covered by dozens of Wall Street analysts. It was in the Fortune 500. And it ran this fraud for years, not months, years, in broad daylight. The tool they used wasn't some complex technology. It was complexity itself. The accounting was so dense, the structure so layered, that most people gave up trying to understand it. If you asked how Enron made money, and the answer took 45 minutes and involved 17 different entities across 3 continents, you either accepted that the people running it must be very smart, or you looked stupid for not understanding. Most people chose the first option. Bethany McLean published her article in March 2001. The company filed for bankruptcy 9 months later. She saw it. The question is why almost nobody else did, until it was too late for the 4,500 people in Houston who lost everything. The next story on this channel is about a man who ran a different kind of lie, not in a boardroom, but inside a pharmaceutical company that promised to cure terminal patients. Click the video on screen. Subscribe if you haven't yet.